Time for another episode of Local Roots. Hi, I'm Todd Studer. If someone who has never been here were to search the town that we live in today, what story would they find? Not the story that you know, not the story you live every day, but the story that appears first on a screen. That question sits at the heart of this episode of Local Roots because for generations, communities told their own stories. They were told by people who lived here, worked here, raised families here, and understood the context behind every headline. Local radio stations, local newspapers, local photographers, local editors, people who knew the names, the neighborhoods, the backstories, and the stakes. Today, that model is largely gone, and what replaced it did not come with a community meeting. Stories are now shaped by algorithms, written by people who do not live here, filtered through national narratives that do not fit local reality. So the question becomes simple but powerful: who owns the story now? And maybe more importantly, who should? And today, we're talking about narrative ownership, community voice, and why reclaiming local storytelling may be one of the most important civic acts left. But first, if you have a leak, a clogged drain, or if you're planning a big remodel, Waldstein Plumbing in Council Bluffs has you covered with fast, reliable service and expert craftsmanship, handling everything from small repairs to major installations. Waldstein Plumbing is locally owned and trusted and take pride in doing the job right the first time. Residential, commercial, big, small, when plumbing problems strike. Visit waldsteinplumbing.com. If you're looking for all natural health solutions across Southwest Iowa, Bambi's Green Acres Natural Market, she's located in Council Bluffs at 805 South Main Street, and she has been serving our area since 1997 with a wide range of vitamins, supplements, essential oils, herbal remedies, staffed with over 37 years of experience. Bambi's helps you reach your health goals. Explore your wellness options online at bambisgreenacres.com. Bambi's Green Acres Natural Market, putting health in your hands. And families and cemeteries across the region turn to Solid Ground Monument Company for skilled restoration that protects every story that's etched in stone. Now scheduling springtime services, the company provides monument repair, gentle cleaning, full reconstruction, and complete cemetery restoration. For families needing a new memorial, Solid Ground Monument Company comes to you in your time of need to design a tribute that truly honors your loved one. This is Southwest Iowa's trusted cemetery restoration and monument service. Solid Ground Monument Company, preserving legacies with care and craftsmanship. All right, let's begin the episode with how local stories used to be told. There was a time when every community had multiple storytellers. The morning radio host who knew which roads flooded first. The newspaper editor who knew which zoning debate would matter in 5 years. The photographer who knew which moments were history and which were noise. Stories did not appear out of nowhere. They were developed over time, often with conversation, disagreement, and accountability built in. If a story ran on the front page, you could walk into the office and talk to the person who wrote it. If something was wrong, it got corrected publicly. If something needed context, it was added. Local media was not perfect, but it was present, and presence matters because presence creates responsibility. Local reporters did not parachute in for clicks. They covered school board meetings that lasted hours. They covered city council votes that barely made headlines. They sat through planning commission hearings that would not pay off for years. They knew the difference between a one-off incident and a pattern. They knew when a story was truly newsworthy and when it was simply loud. Most importantly, they knew the people. When someone was quoted, that quote carried weight because the reporter knew the impact it would have. When a business was mentioned, it came with an understanding of how many families depended on it. When a nonprofit was covered, it was framed within the real needs of the community, not a national template. Stories had roots. So what changed? And why does it matter? The shift did not happen overnight. It happened quietly. Local media ownership consolidated. Budgets shrank. Newsrooms emptied. Coverage became thinner, then sporadic, and then reactionary. And eventually, something else filled the gap. Social media platforms, national news outlets, aggregated content sites, press releases posted without context. The problem was not that stories disappeared. The problem was that stories lost stewardship. When a community no longer owns its narrative, several things happen. First, complexity disappears. Stories become simplified to fit national themes. Second, context is lost. Events are judged without historical or cultural understanding. And the third, trust erodes. People stop believing what they read because it does not match what they see. Does this sound familiar? Fourth, silence grows. Important stories simply do not get told at all. This is not about nostalgia. This is about function. Communities need accurate mirrors. When the mirror is distorted, people begin to feel unseen or misrepresented. Businesses feel reduced to stereotypes. Civic leaders feel misunderstood. Residents feel unheard. And that has consequences far beyond media. So, what is the cost of losing local narrative control? When a community loses control of its story, it pays a price. Economic development suffers because perception influences investment. Recruitment becomes harder because people research places before they move. Civic engagement declines because people stop believing that their voice matters. Nonprofits struggle because their work is misunderstood or simply invisible. Local pride erodes because the dominant narrative doesn't reflect lived reality. And once that erosion begins, it accelerates because stories shape identity. If the only stories being told about a community are negative, incomplete, or sensationalized, that story becomes reality in the minds of people who have never been there. The danger is not criticism. The danger is imbalance. Communities are complex. They contain challenges and strengths at the same time. So when coverage only highlights one side, it stops being journalism and starts becoming distortion. So, real local examples, without naming any names, we've all seen it. A headline that focuses on a single incident without mentioning years of progress. A social media post that goes viral but omits critical facts. A regional article that reduces an entire town to one statistic. Often the people affected by these stories are not consulted. Local business owners suddenly have to explain themselves to customers. Nonprofit leaders have to defend work that was never questioned locally. Residents feel embarrassed by a portrayal they don't even recognize. And here's the most important part. The damage is rarely intentional. It happens because no one with local knowledge was involved in telling the story. When narrative ownership leaves a community, intention is replaced by efficiency, and efficiency does not care about nuance. So, why local voices matter now more than ever is because we are living in a time of information overload. People are not lacking content, they're lacking clarity. Local voices provide that clarity. They can say, here is what happened, and here is why it matters here. They can say, this looks big online, but here is the real impact. They can say, this deserves attention, even if it will not trend. Local voices anchor stories to place. They protect against misinterpretation. They restore trust. They create continuity. And perhaps most importantly, they allow communities to speak for themselves. Storytelling is a civic responsibility. We often think of storytelling as entertainment or marketing, but at the local level, it is civic infrastructure. Stories connect people to decisions. Stories explain why policies matter. Stories humanize data. Without them, communities become transactional instead of relational. Local storytelling is not about promotion. It's about accuracy, continuity, and accountability. It ensures that the narrative reflects reality rather than reaction. So, what is the role of podcasting in reclaiming local stories? It's what we're doing right here. This is where podcasting enters the conversation. Podcasting removes many of the barriers that were once limited to local media. It does not require a broadcast license. It does not require a printing press. It does not require massive overhead. What it does require is intention. Local podcasting works when it is grounded in place, when hosts understand the geography, when guests represent lived experience, when conversations are allowed to breathe. Unlike short-form media, podcasts allow for nuance. Unlike headlines, they allow for explanation. And unlike sound bites, they allow for context. That makes podcasting uniquely suited for local narrative reclamation. So this is why Local Roots exist. This is not accidental. Local Roots exist because local stories deserve local voices. It exists because communities are more than statistics, because businesses are more than logos, because nonprofits are more than fundraising posts. The goal is not to replace traditional journalism. The goal is to complement it, to provide depth where coverage is thin, to give voice where silence exists, to preserve context where memory fades. The studios on Willow and physical space matters because storytelling needs that physical space, a place where conversations can happen face to face, a place where people feel comfortable sharing, a place rooted in the community itself. That is why spaces like the studios on Willow, where I am at right now, matter. They're not just rooms with microphones. They are local infrastructure. They signal permanence. They signal commitment. They signal that local voices matter enough to invest in. When storytelling has a home, it becomes sustainable. So, sponsors and narrative stewardship include local businesses who often underestimate their role in narrative ownership. When a business sponsors local media, they're not just buying exposure, it is supporting the ecosystem that tells the community story. Sponsors become stewards of local narrative. They help ensure stories continue to be told accurately and responsibly. That is not advertising. That is civic investment. So, what does reclaiming the story look like? Well, reclaiming the local narrative does not mean controlling it. It means participating in it. It means showing up. It means sharing context. It means supporting platforms that value accuracy over outrage. It means understanding that silence allows others to define the story. Communities that tell their own stories shape their own future. So, if you live here, you are part of the story. If you run a business here, you are part of the story. If you volunteer here, you are part of the story. And if you raise a family here, you are part of the story. And stories do not tell themselves. They require voices. Well, Service Master Restorer by Schmader knows it's hard to get back to normal when you've suffered serious property damage due to flooding, fire, or smoke, which can often lead to mold, and you might be left with all sorts of questions about how to get your home or business back to normal. Service Master Restorer by Schmader offers quality commercial and residential restoration services all around Southwest Iowa. Call 402-339-9911. And another local business that believes in local voices is HR Helix, delivering fractional HR leadership and strategic people solutions for professional firms across our region, including right here in Southwest Iowa. HR Helix was founded by Amy Luckenbill and helps growing organizations that have outgrown the do-it-yourself HR, but you're not ready for a full-time executive. From compliance and culture to performance and structure, HR Helix turns complex HR challenges into clear, confident action. Their approach is simple: old school smart, next gen savvy. So if your business is ready for better systems, stronger teams, and leadership support that fits, visit hrhelix.com. Structure, strategy, and support. Well, to close things up for today, the question is not whether stories will be told, because they will. The question is whether they will be told with understanding, context, and care. Local stories deserve local voices. They deserve people who know the roads, the seasons, the challenges, and the victories. They deserve people who live with the consequences of what gets said. This is not about going backward. It's about moving forward intentionally. Reclaiming the narrative is not an act of nostalgia. It is an act of responsibility. My name's Todd Studer. This is Local Roots, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.